Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. We may have all come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. Our loyalties must transcend our race, our tribe, our class, and our nation. Our life begins to end the day we become silent about things that matter. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. The time is always right to do what is right, and I have the audacity to believe that people everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education, and culture of their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. Faith is taking that first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. Now I say to you today, my friends, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. And I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal. Good morning. My name is Mayor Quentin Hart. These are the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and it is a fitting place to start our time together. And I want to welcome you to the 2021 Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service. I brought mine. So I believe the way we interact, serve, and collaborate as a community is essential to the health and vitality of our city and to each of us as individuals. How we work together and care for each other defines our community, and it determines our future. And this is why we chose Community is Essential as today's theme. Essential means absolutely necessary and extremely important. And from the mayor to the healthcare worker, to the educators and pastors, from each child or to our senior adults, every one of us is essential to the success of our community. And as our special guests share their thoughts in honor of the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., I hope you will be encouraged and inspired to engage in our community in an even deeper way. This event is sponsored by CUNA Mutual Group and Believe Waterloo, a fund that I established at the Waterloo Community Foundation to help people in our community who are doing good. And to kick off our celebration, I've invited a beloved friend and supporter of Waterloo, Reverend Kathy Young. Kathy is joining us today from the sunny shores of Florida. So grab your coffee or breakfast shake and join me in welcoming Kathy Young.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Kathy Young. I'm a retired public school teacher here in Waterloo and Presbyterian pastor in Waterloo and Cedar Falls. In my youth, I was active in several community measures, including child advocacy, racial justice, autism education, and diabetes research. But as I got older, I settled on what was most important to me, education. One of my favorite quotes comes from Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively, to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education." I was going along, the pandemic hit in March. I immediately began using the platform Zoom so that our Bible study could continue because we are a tight community. And I began writing a weekly devotion for both my class and though I posted it on Facebook, hoping to bring people deeper faith and shine the light of hope in a very dark time. And then came May 25th. I could not watch the entire 9 minutes of George Floyd's murder. I called a friend of mine here in Waterloo who is Black and asked her how she was doing in the aftermath. We then talked about what needed to be done locally, and that's how I became involved in the community-wide read of Abram Kindy's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, in conjunction with you and I. Many, many people were involved in that read, and we have encouraged them to take action afterwards by getting involved in either the Economic Inclusion Network or in criminal justice reform. Iowa has the 4th highest rate of incarceration in the country. Blackhawk County has the highest rate in Iowa. More must be done. I am proud to be from this community. I am proud to be from Waterloo. Our children and our grandchildren live here. But in this time of political divisiveness, there is so much more work to be done. We must join forces as people who care about one another. We must work to make sure that every one of our children receives an excellent education, and all adults have the opportunity to earn a living wage and self-respect. In the words of Dr. King, we must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or perish together as fools. I welcome the inauguration of President Biden and Vice President Harris this week. I hope that we can hold people accountable for their actions and that we can bridge the divide with love, which is the only thing that overcomes fear.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and I want to thank you and the Young Family Foundation for your work and support for this community over the years. It's people like you who are essential to making Waterloo a great place for everyone to live. It brings me great honor and pleasure to read to you the City of Waterloo, Iowa's proclamation. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. changed our nation forever through his leadership, service, and clarity of vision. On Martin Luther King Jr.'s federal holiday, we honor the lasting legacy of this great American, remember the ideals for which he fought, and recommit ourselves to ensuring that our country's promise extends to all Americans across this great land. And whereas Dr. King devoted his life to strengthening the content of the American character and called on our nation to live up to its founding principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all its citizens. And whereas Dr. King's faith gave him the courage to confront discrimination and segregation, and he preached that all powers of evil are ultimately no match for even one individual armed with eternal truth. Through his determination, spirit, and resolve, Dr. King helped lift souls and lead one of the greatest movements in the history for equality and freedom. And whereas our nation has made progress towards realizing the dream, yet the work to achieve liberty and justice for all is never ending. We must continue to protect the rights won through the sacrifice of Dr. King and other civil rights leaders. Our nation must never rest until equality is real, opportunity is universal, and all citizens are empowered to realize their dreams. And whereas, as we observe Dr. King's birthday, I encourage all to celebrate his memory by performing acts of kindness through service to others. Let us live out Dr. King's teaching as we continue to work for the day when dignity and humanity of every person is respected. Now, therefore, I, Quentin Hart, Mayor of the City of Waterloo, do hereby call upon all citizens of Waterloo to join in the national observance of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday on Monday, January 18th, 2021, and encourage all to observe the day with appropriate civic, community, and service programs and activities in honor of his life and legacy.
Just over a year ago, I had the privilege to go to another community in Reggio Emilia, Italy, to learn firsthand about new techniques in youth education that were so inspiring and they were drawing out of these children a natural curiosity about the world of color in which they found themselves. We tried to bring these ideas back to experiment right here in community, but of course, when we got back here to the States, we found a newfangled world that pushed our loved ones right out of our arms. The pandemic was ripping families from families, loved ones from community, and it was exposing the raw nerves of an aged socio-political architecture and community that was in drastic need of revamping, of renewal. Poverty and inequity and violence became more apparent across so many community sectors. Tornadoes, hurricanes, derechos were still happening everywhere. And when George Floyd was killed, the physical and political asphyxiation was unbearable. But wait, I heard the Harlem Renaissance poet say, "Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow." In other words, continue to gather those children, all precious in our sight. Let them read, play, engage in animated theater. Let us continue to engage in deep conversation with each other and listening exercise with each other, understanding that as we build together, we can't have healing and reconciliation without truth and accountability. Williamson once wrote, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves," she says, "who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. So that's why our work is never done. Community, we need you now more than ever before.
Such a dream, of such a dream, of such a dream, of such a dream, of such a
Senator Cory Booker began his career in Newark, New Jersey, providing legal services for low-income families, helping tenants with slumlords, and improving overall living conditions and helping people stay in their homes. At age 29, Cory was elected to the Newark City Council, and beginning in 2006, he served as Newark's mayor for more than 7 years. In 2013, Cory became the first African-American elected to the U.S. Senate from New Jersey. And I'll tell you, I really like his career path. In the Senate, Cory has advanced economic opportunity and equal justice, including leading efforts to reform our broken criminal justice system, increase wages and ensure hard work is fairly rewarded, spur economic development and create jobs, and protect the rights for all Americans to breathe clean air and drink clean water. But I first met Senator Booker at a function in Waterloo long before he ran for presidential nomination. And I know locally, being the first in the nation when it comes to primaries, you get an opportunity to be up close and personal with a lot of election figures on a national level. And sometimes we ask that question to ourselves, will I ever see that person again? And I wanted to give you a story because I was in DC, right? And I was with some of my colleagues, and we saw another senator that had walked by, and one of my colleagues yelled out and called that senator's name, and that senator kept on walking by. But I saw Senator Booker coming down one of the hallways in one of the buildings, and I took a chance and I yelled out, "Senator Booker." And as he stepped past talking to all his aides, swarmed with media and different folks, he stopped, turned around, and saw who I was, and walked over and said, "Hi, Mayor Hart," asking me how I was doing. And I'll tell you that's important, right? Because as elected officials, we take a duty to serve our communities. And by remembering someone from Waterloo, Iowa, on a day when I'm sure there were plenty of things taking place, really meant a lot to me. And Senator Booker, we know he's a public servant, but he's also been a mentor to me at times. But he's been on the front lines of trying to create better communities for everyone in our local communities. So without further ado, I would like to give a very warm virtual welcome, thank you, shout out to Senator Cory Booker.
Hi, everyone. It's Cory Booker. I'm so grateful to Believe Waterloo for allowing me to speak before the gathered leaders and clergy and committed Americans on this Martin Luther King Day. I have to say, I grew up having reverence for Dr. King. He was heroic, but in many ways, with his humble heart, he taught us to see the dignity and the humanity, to understand that greatness is not just the purview of a person with a title or a position or with some kind of worldly power, that greatness, as he said, anybody can be great because anybody can serve. All you need is a heart full of spirit and a soul energized by love. This was something I've come to see in my life. And in this time of pandemic and economic recession, of hardships and pain, of disunity, discord, and hate, now more than ever, we don't need leaders up on high. We need people authentically connected to community, people willing to be there for their fellow woman and fellow man, people willing to stand in the breach. One of the most difficult times before this pandemic that I saw in leadership was when in New Jersey, a horrible, horrible natural weather disaster was heading towards us. I know you all know about such natural disasters in Waterloo as well. Well, in New Jersey, it was Hurricane Sandy. It was 2013, if I remember correctly, and the horrible storm was barreling in, and I was mayor of New Jersey's largest city, Newark, and I was out in a command vehicle being driven by two police officers, surveying the community, surveying the streets, trying to coordinate a lot of our efforts to make sure we were keeping people safe, keeping power on, and more. And as I was driving down a long stretch of my city, I get a phone call, and I have to say, forgive me for saying it this way, but I believed at that time that it began with the stupidest question anybody could ask. The question was, this is how it got. I answered my phone and the person says, "Hi, this is the White House operator. Will you hold for the President of the United States?" And I'm like, who says no to that? And of course I say yes. And the next thing you know, I'm speaking to my second favorite Obama. I'm speaking to the President of the United States, Barack Obama. It was beautiful. He was just checking in on me and the city, seeing how we were doing. And it was an affirming conversation in the midst of a storm. And as I hung up with him, the next call I get, no operator at this point, it was just him. It was the governor of my state checking in on me as well. And it was, again, two human beings connecting with each other, encouraging each other amidst the trial that we were facing. I hung up the phone with him, and at that point I'm coming up a hill, and I see at the top of the hill that all the telephone poles had already come down, crashing down. It was just a mess of wire and wood. As we got closer, I saw through the front of the car a person out there with a floodlight frantically flashing at it. My police officers were going to stop and survey the damage anyway, but now they pulled to a stop right in front of the man, and I roll down my window, and I see now it's an elderly man in a yellow slicker. And as the wind and the rain was howling and the storm raising the volume, I raised my voice and I yelled at him, "Sir, what are you doing out here?" And then this man looks at me like I just asked him the stupidest question. He looks at me and he goes, "Mayor, look at this. It's so dangerous here. I'm standing out here to make sure no one comes along and gets hurt." And there I was. I just spoke to the President of the United States of America, talked to the governor of my state. I was the mayor of the largest city, but I realized in that second that the greatest greatness that I saw and witnessed in that evening was the man standing on top of a hill in dark of night, in savage storm, to watch out for his neighbor. We are called to love one another, and yet we are failing or falling short. We are called to create a more beloved community. This is so much at the center of the dream and the hope for our society, and at the center of Martin Luther King's dream. He called upon all of us to understand that we are caretakers of that dream. In fact, if you go to where Martin Luther King was killed, right at the Lorraine Motel, where he was slain, if you look down there, you will see a block of stone. And written in that stone is actually words from sacred texts, the Torah and Quran, and from the Bible that I grew up with. The words are from Joseph's brothers who, seeing Joseph, they grabbed him, proclaimed these words, grabbed him, and threw him into a well to die. Well, you all know he didn't die there. He rose up to lead a nation through crisis. And what does it say where Martin Luther King was slain? The words of Joseph's brothers written there. It says, "Behold, here cometh the dreamer. Let us slay him and see what becomes of his dream." On this Martin Luther King Day, we honor him not just by quoting him or remembering his works. We honor him by continuing the struggle and answering the questions for ourselves. What will become of the dream? Taking responsibility for it and committing, especially in these difficult times, that we will stand in the darkness, that we will bring light to people's lives, that we ourselves will get to the mountaintop, and that we will make this nation ultimately the promised land, one where justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. May God bless you. Happy Martin Luther King Day. And in this difficult time, may we find a way forward for our nation to higher ground and ultimately that promised land. Thank you.
Senator Booker, I cannot thank you enough for taking time out during a crisis-filled time in Washington, D.C. You're taking the time out to encourage us, to inspire us, and to celebrate Dr. King, and I do truly appreciate it. But before we conclude, I want to thank once again our partner in this event, CUNA Mutual Group. And CUNA has long been a champion of equity and inclusion work here in the Cedar Valley, and we are grateful for their leadership and their support. And I want to thank friends and colleagues at the Waterloo Community Foundation and Believe Waterloo. I want to give a special thanks to Joy Briscoe, our event coordinator, and the studio, Waterloo, for their creative video work. The City of Waterloo for their technical support, and to all our guests, Kathy Young, Abraham Funches, the West High Choir, led by Lucas Overton, of course, Senator Booker, and a special shout out to Wendy Bowman, Communications Director. This MLK Day of Service celebration, it isn't quite over yet. We are extending the celebration through the entire week. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evening, we are hosting panel discussions from rhetoric to reality. We are creating an inclusive and supportive environment. We'll be covering also the topics of health and well-being. We'll be covering economic opportunity and creating a vibrant community. And some of our panelists include none other than Kingsley Botchway, Angie Whitner, Pamela Delagardelle, Stacey Bentley, Todd Holcomb, Robert Smith, Sharina Salas, Carrie Dara, and Joy Briscoe. Registration links will be sent out to all who registered for this morning event. Or go to Believe Waterloo Facebook page for details. And finally, we are living in challenging times, to say the least, and we find ourselves caught in one of the most divided political climates in American history. And we continue to bear the negative effects of the policies, practices, and prejudice Dr. King marched against. The chasm of racial disparities, health, wealth, and equity before the law still exists, even here in the Cedar Valley. But we are trying, and we will bridge the gap if we continue to think for the greater good and roll up our sleeves and work together. And we cannot be pulled off course by the strong force of polarization of America. And we cannot be distracted by the voices who speak hate and distrust. We must do what we know in our hearts is right. Care for the least of these, of our brothers and our sisters, love our neighbors as ourselves, and fulfill Dr. King's dream. Now, rise up and live out the true meaning of our nation's creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. Community is essential. You are essential to this community. Thank you.